Kayo is one of the new heroes introduced in heavy hitters, and his hero ability reads, you have one weapon zone, attack action cards you own get +1 power while they're in any zone other than the combat chain, and the first time you discard a card with 6 or more power during each of our action phases, create a might token. So a lot going on with the hero ability, let's break it all down. With the first one weapon zone, because he only has one arm in the lore, is a massive flavor win. But this does nerf our Blood Rush Bellows turns just a little bit since we don't have access to the second Mandible Claw. But there's a really simple way to get around this nerf, and I'll explain when we get there in the deck tech. So for the second ability of Kayo, it's quite simple, but it's actually very strong. So historically, the weakness of the Brute class in general has always been that they could lose to their own deck. This came up multiple times every single game that they would play, since the most powerful Brute cards had a random discard mechanic to enable their abilities. But these cards, when the random discard doesn't go your way, often meant you lost the game because of it. But with Kayo having access to this ability, we completely bypass all of those bullshit losses that Rhinar or Levia would have with those same cards. And just to show the difference this ability makes, you can simply compare the 35 to 36 6 power attacks Rhinar used to run, compared to the average Kayo deck having 54 6 power attacks thanks to this ability. So on every draw discard effect Rhinar or Levia would use, it would usually leave you with about a 60% chance to work, with Kayo on the other hand having a 90% hit rate. That is a 30% difference on a lose if you fail effect that comes up multiple times every single game. So yes, very powerful ability. But if you're impressed by that one, let me tell you that the third ability is probably the strongest of the three. So if you've been playing Fab for a while like us, you might be able to remember the old discussions on if the Ira Blitz deck was too strong of a hero to print in CC. Now, if you weren't around for those discussions, the consensus of it was being that yes, a simple and pretty much non-conditional +1 every single turn would be too strong for CC. But if that's the case, you might as well start calling this deck Ira Armed and Dangerous, because this ability is exactly that. The fact that the Might token is a buff to any attack that we choose brings it even more value. This is due to us being able to put this +1 on top of a card like CNC or Senpaki, turning our 6 power disruptive attacks into 7 power, which requires our opponent into giving us a third card. In that case, the +1 ends up being a +3, and that's only scratching the surface. And so with these abilities in mind, it was really easy to ask ourselves, what is the strongest card being held back by its consistency? And the answer to this was almost like a deja vu feeling to me personally, because if you've been following us for a while, there was a specific card we tried our hardest to break in Rhinar, I think about over a year ago now. And thing was, if the deck was able to do its thing, then it was one of the strongest decks in the game. But the major problem with that deck and why it didn't perform well was due to the consistency of the class not having enough 6 power attacks. So of course, when a hero gets printed that can fix all the problems that that list had, you know damn well we're about to jump on the opportunity to play Berserk Kayo. And so right off the bat, this already gives Kayo an amazing floor for a deck of having an above rate deck turn from turn thanks to our Ira ability, until we eventually draw into our one-shot combo of Berserk plus Blood Rush thanks to our second ability. So now let's get into the specific cards I chose for my list and why. So I'm running 21 blues, 21 reds and 18 yellows, with my only non-6 power attacks in the whole deck being my 3 Berserks and my 3 Blood Rushes for maximum efficiency. So for the Berserk Blood Rush, I also run 6 Pulping and 6 Wild Ride to enable those turns to go crazy wide and just kill opponents on the spot if you're able to chain them. The Pulpings have an additional benefit of being amazing at closing out games thanks to the Dominate. And more often than not, I actually find myself simply playing a Berserk if I have 1 or 2 of these draw discard effects in my hand. For a simple 1 resource, draw 1 to 2 to 3 cards. Doing it like this has a pretty interesting effect as well, because drawing 1 card off the Berserk usually equates to about 3 damage thanks to probably enabling our Claw. Drawing 2 usually means that you're able to Claw plus Arsenal, or just straight up 6 damage. And then draw 3, well, in that case, it's just Ancestral Recall, 1 resource, draw 3. So yeah, Berserk's pretty good. Another draw discard card in here is Bear Fangs, and this might low-key be the strongest card in the deck, as it will often come in as a 2-card 9, Endless More rates, using the might token from last turn, while creating another might token for this turn. And that's on top of it being a draw discard effect for Berserk and Beast Within triggers, which becomes even more powerful if we have an agility token, which is very often. So for agilities, I run 6 Assault and Battery, 3 Wage agilities, 3 Agile Windups, and 3 Cast Bones in the sideboard. Assault and Wage Agility have similar roles in the deck as powerful 2-card hand options, with Assault and Battery having the upside of letting you effectively use any wasted cards that turn cycle by using it to its Beat Chest ability to create an agility. And at first I thought doing this was kind of below rate, but that agility often meant at least +6 damage on your next turn, and the discard is already a +1 from our IRA abilities. So activating that Beat Chest ability was often extremely powerful. Impressed me so much that I actually added in the reds. Then Wage Agility is another card I was super impressed by, since if the opponent blocks this out, they often cannot use the agility token they just gained. So this prompts them to not block, but giving us an agility with cards like Bare Fangs, Savage Feast, Swing Bigs in our deck can often mean that we get +8 value from our agilities. It also plays extremely well with our game plan of setting up a 5-card hand. Since playing this doesn't have a random draw discard effect, we don't have to risk us discarding our power cards, instead letting us set up optimal arsenal targets. And then when we do that, it's also presenting the powerful on hit that I just explained, forcing the opponent into blocking to not give us this insane value, which just slows the game down to help us find our combo more consistently. And then last cards I wanted to mention was Agile and Mighty Windup. These cards are extremely powerful. Not only are they insane plays on turn 0 or turn 1, but the instant discard comes up a lot to turn on cards like Claws or Riled Up. These effects often come up in the super late game when we're in that draw 4 blues territory. Let me attack with Claws, and then after my opponent declares their blocks, I can instant speed, discard this card from my hand, create my might token, trigger my KO, give my Claws go again, and then follow up from there. So there's actually a little bit of skill needed to be able to play these cards effectively, but overall very powerful cards. And lastly, before I talk about the sideboard, I wanted to talk about Send Packing. So this card is a yellow brute CNC, right? Which is already strong. But this is also in a deck with access to that IRA ability like we talked about as well. So Send Packing coming in for 7. We already talked about how powerful that is, yeah? But now, on top of that, the effect will banish the Arsenal card face up, giving us info on attack, which is another benefit, making it better than CNC. Like really strong there, right? Even if we swing for 6 and they do double block it, we know exactly which card it is in their hand, letting us play around it. But to top all of that off, CNC's biggest problem was people putting Crown of Prov in front of CNC just to cycle away their arsenal and keep their card advantage. You can't do that against Send Packing. So yeah, like I don't understand. I already knew this card was strong when I seen it, but after playing it, like holy shit, this card is nuts. So yeah. Rest of it's pretty self-explanatory, but that's it for the 60 cards that I run from my Berserk list. Now the main problems with this 60 is when opponents present on hits that can disrupt us from setting up or getting off our combo turn, games can start to become a problem thanks to our 0 blocks. Also, there's certain on hits in the game that just accrue way too much value if you don't block them. On hits like Mask of Momentum or Katsu triggers, for example. So there seem to be enough matchups that I wanted to create a sideboard that can transform me from a combo deck into a deck that can play more of the mid-range to leverage our 3rd ability more than our 2nd one. So for my sideboard, I created a transformative option to cut majority of our 0 blocks and our Berserks more effective blockable cards. And those cards are 3 CNC, 3 E-Strike, 3 Sink Below, and 3 Cast Bones. Our spoiler, by the way. Yep. We play this configuration into lists that it's more value to block their attack than to take it and try race. Decks like Azalea, classes like Assassin or Ninja, for example, all these types of decks. So into those decks, this 60 is more suited to block out efficiently and return with our insane baseline rates thanks to our IRA ability to outvalue our opponent until we're able to get off our Blood Rush or our Cast Bones and take the lead from there. To explain them individually, CNC is just an effective 2-card hand that can slow the game down against these aggro decks. But like we talked about before, adding that might token on top, putting it to 7 power is kind of fucking broken. Next we have E-strikes and sync to aid with our 0 blocks to make our turn cycles way more flexible. Being able to sync away a 0 block and then draw into a 3 block and block with it. Can make sync 7 block in that case, or the other case just being blocking with our other cards, keeping our 0 block and E-strike to swing for 7 with it. Means we still get 3.5 value out of our 0 block that we otherwise couldn't have. E-strike also combos off with Cast Bones insanely well. E-strike go again into Cast Bones as a 3-card hand is extremely powerful and can win you the game. Cast Bones make a quick in for E-strike draw is also extremely fuego. So very clean together those 2 cards. And since we're on the top of Cast Bones really is that guy. So 1 card 6 plus agility token majority of the time. With agility, like I mentioned before, usually meaning you can get an extra 6 damage off. Means that playing this Cast Bones usually enables us to plus 12 damage on our next turn, which is so fucking strong. Often your turn cycles are just looking like is blocking 9 or even 12 into playing your Cast Bones, let your opponent do their thing, and then we get to return with something like a pulping for 13 dominate into claw into swing big for 8 out of nowhere. So Cast Bones not only gives you so much value that you get really far ahead in the game when you play it early, but like I mentioned before, off of the pulping, you can just close out games that don't even look closable, thanks to how much might tokens you're able to create off of it, along with the agility. So I will mention though that the one problem with the card is the deck building requirements. So since we need as many 6 powers as possible, just like our Berserk, that's why my list doesn't run cards like Tear Limb from Limb or Reckless Swing. Both extremely powerful options for the deck, and I do recommend everyone try those cards out for themselves, see which playstyle you guys like yourselves the most. But yeah, super happy with how this list came out. Link in the description, go test it out for yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya. I just want to shout out our sponsor for this video, Midtown Game Exchange. Midtown is your one-stop shop for all Flesh and Blood cards at the most affordable prices on the internet. They do this by having a setup for online sales only to keep their own costs down, just to pass that on to all of us. So please make sure that you head down to midtowngameexchange.com for all your Flesh and Blood needs, and we truly appreciate their support.